Closed captioning of this program is underwritten by the Office of Self-Determination and Constitutional Development of UVI.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Good day, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Forum, a program produced in collaboration with WTJX TV for well over 35 years. It is our hope that through these programs, you, the voting public, will have a better understanding of each candidate running for elective office in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We invite you to look at all our programs for the 2024 election year right here on WTJX TV, with candidates seeking office as a senator in the 36th legislature or as delegates for the Constitutional Convention. For the first time also, we are interviewing candidates for the boards of education and election. Although the candidates for these positions were invited, not all responded or accepted the invitation. We're delighted to have here today, however, 4 candidates running for the position of delegate for the Constitutional Convention in the St. Croix District. I am Francine Lang, a member of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, and I will serve as the moderator for today's program. The candidates have been informed in advance of the guidelines of the program. No candidate had access to the questions in advance. The first responder to each question will be rotated among the participants. Answers are generally 60 or 90 seconds. Changes in timing of a question will be announced in advance. Any comment directed specifically at another participant will be followed by a rebuttal of 60 seconds. All are expected to be respectful of everyone. So let's begin. I will ask each candidate to identify who they are and to state their ballot number. We will learn more about each as our discussion ensues. Let's start with candidate number 1. Please state your name and ballot number, please.
Good day. My name is Attorney Raymond T. James, running for delegate for the District of St. Croix, number 14, on the election ballot on November the 5th.
Second candidate.
Good evening. My name is John Canigata, and I am number 15 on your ballot, running for the Constitutional Convention in the District of St. Croix.
Candidate number 3.
Good evening to all the people in the Virgin Islands. This is Sheila Scullion, number 5 on the ballot.
And candidate number 4.
Greetings. I am Rupert Ross Jr., candidate number 10 on the ballot.
Thank you. And now for the questions. I'll start with Attorney James. What motivated you to become a delegate for the 6th Constitutional Convention? You have 60 seconds.
My motivation stemmed from the fact that it's been now at least 24 years since the 5th Constitutional Convention, that is in 1979 and 1980. And I do believe that the people of the Virgin Islands should continue to fight for a constitution of their own, not the revised 1954 Organic Act as amended. We need to have self-government as a constitution provided for by the people and its elected officials.
Thank you. Mr. Canigata, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you, Francine. Well, first of all, I think my motivation did not come very easily. I think it was a tough decision whether I wanted to be a delegate or not. Obviously, the situation in the Virgin Islands, primarily in St. Croix, because it's the district I'm from, I've just seen a degradation in our society. I've seen some lapse in the responsibilities of our executive branch and our judicial branch, in addition to our legislative branch. And I really believe that if we can put a substantial constitution together, it'll set the direction for the Virgin Islands probably for the next 100 years. And if we're successful at doing that, I think it's the impetus for the change that we really need. We live in a society where I think we're less than 110,000 people. We have tons of laws that are affecting all whacks of our life. I believe that our government has too much power, it has too much teeth, and our citizenship doesn't have very much. And I'd like to put some of that power back in the hands of the citizens.
Thank you very much. Ms. Scullion?
Thank you,
You have
Francine.
60 seconds.
Yes, a constitution can be a set of rules or guidelines that would be unique to the Virgin Islands. For the listening audience, all of the states have their own state constitution as well as a federal constitution, but we don't have a constitution yet here in the Virgin Islands. And so it would give all of us an opportunity to do something very unique for the Virgin Islands, and it's going to require a lot of work.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. Many years ago, as the Virgin Islands evolved into a modern-day society, it was recognized by our leaders that a constitution written by the people of the Virgin Islands was essential for future development. I participated in that process back then, and I made a pledge to myself and to my community that as long as we are without a constitution of our own choosing, that I would continue to participate in this process so that the people of the Virgin Islands can develop a society of their own choosing for their own future.
Thank you. So the next question, we'll start with Mr. Kanegata. Were any of you a delegate in a previous constitutional convention? If so, why do you think the process did not end with a congressionally approved document? You have 60 seconds.
Sure. No, I have not been a previous candidate or a delegate for the Constitution, the previous 5 that we've had before. There appeared to be some laws or some policies that were established within the Constitution and made it kind of divisive, and I think that was the primary reason that it wasn't successful. I think things have changed within our society over the last 50 years, and some of those policies, it really needs to reflect a wider margin of our community, so it like I said, it's evenly balanced to affect everybody in a positive way. So ultimately, I think some of that divisiveness is what caused some of the constitutions to fail, or all of them to fail in the past.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, you have 60 seconds.
No, I did not participate in the former Constitutional Convention.
Mr. Ross, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity of serving as a member of the 3rd Constitutional Convention under the leadership of former Governor Alexander Farley. And I also had the opportunity to serve as the president of the 4th Constitutional Convention, which, by the way, was approved by the Congress of the United States and returned to the people of the Virgin Islands who rejected it.
Thank you. Attorney James, you have 60 seconds.
It's important to know, no, I was not a member of any of the prior Constitutional Convention, but it is important to note that the last convention, the 5th one, that the President Obama, in a letter and with Attorney General memorandum, indicated some of the most important factors why that constitution will fail. And one of the primary factors is that the Constitution did not succinctly emphasize the supremacy of the United States Constitution.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Scullion. What do you see as the talents or skill or attitudes needed by all delegates if the convention is to be a success, and how have you demonstrated those skills in your career? You have 90 seconds.
I think for this constitutional convention to be successful, there has to be a very kind of calm demeanor where people really are listening to what each other might be proposing. It's a very serious document because it is for the Virgin Islands specifically, and it can include many different variables, many different factors. So in my life, I tend to be a very good listener, and I tend to really pay attention to the intelligence in the room and to look at it from all angles. And I think that's why I would be a good delegate.
Mr. Ross, you have 90 seconds.
My experience in the two constitutional convention basically dictates that delegates do a couple of things. One, they become familiar with the law authorizing the people of the Virgin Islands to write a constitution of their own choosing, so that we don't step out of the parameters of those laws as we develop our document. Many of the comments made by the executive branch, presidential officers, and congressmen in the past have been to raise the issue of violations of the authorizing legislation, such as was previously mentioned, the lack of recognizing the sovereignty of the United States over the Virgin Islands. Second, I think that the delegates also need to understand and become familiar with the process of debating Robert's Rules of Order and how to conduct business. Third, I think they need to dedicate themselves to become very familiar with the topics in the committees that they've been assigned to, so that they can bring back well-researched recommendations to the entire body for approval. I think if those three things are adhered to, a constitution will be written that will be satisfactory to the people of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Attorney James?
Thank you for the question. Well, I do believe that the Fifth Constitutional Convention had
90 seconds, sorry.
had many positive things of self-governing. But as indicated by the memorandum from the Congress, legal position should provide the necessary guideposts for us to determine what should go in that document. Not explicitly telling us what to do or what to put in it, but as a guidepost. And as a delegate, the delegates have to be able to join together with that in mind, that roadmap of the Fifth Constitutional Convention, so that we can, in fact, have a positive constitution to send back to the governor, the president, and then return and then ultimately voted upon by the people of the Virgin Islands for self-governing.
Thank you, Attorney James. Mr. Kanegeda, you have 90 seconds.
Sure. I think a good delegate or a candidate should have, first of all, a lot of wisdom. I think we should have a clear understanding of the needs of all the districts within the Virgin Islands, and to understand that there's definitely some clear differences. I think a delegate, like you said, has to be dedicated and obviously an understanding that, you know, they might call us a colony, but we still are, you know, a colony of the United States of America, and we have to understand it. I don't think that our laws should try to contradict that. When I've read over some of the past constitutional conventions, I saw some clear things that were missing there, that, you know, gave some power back to the citizen. Once again, I think I mentioned earlier, our government has just too much teeth. There's just a lot of hands within the citizenship, and the citizens have very little say. So I think a delegate needs to understand that first you represent the people of the Virgin Islands, and then try to keep a wholesome government. There has to be some balance between citizenship and government.
Thank you.
So the next question, we'll start with Mr. Ross. What are the key issues you see that must be addressed in our Constitution? And which of those issues are you particularly interested in working on and why? You have 60 seconds.
The key issues that I perceive going forward is that the conventions need to create first a document that can be looked on favorably by the executive branch of the federal government to meet the requirements of Congress so that it can be passed and returned to our people. It must also be a document that everyone in the Virgin Islands, no matter how long they've been here, when they got here, and how long they plan to stay, can feel comfortable that the Constitution protects them equally as residents of this territory. The problems we've had in the past has been the fact that some of the language in some of the documents on face values seem to divide us.
Thank you. Attorney James, you'll be next. Do you need me to reread the question?
No.
Okay, you have 60 seconds.
Listen very carefully.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ross and I serve another commission, and we did very well by understanding each other. Nevertheless, yes, if elected, I would look at primarily the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is very important, and what goes into it, and how it is, if you will, written. We have a big problem in the Virgin Islands as it relates to homelessness. And I think that the Bill of Rights should be able to delineate those issues that affect those people and give the local courts all of the necessary, if you will, constitutional rights to address that growing problem in the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Mr. Canigeta, do you need me to reread the question?
No, I think I'm pretty good on that.
All right,
So-
60 seconds.
Sure. Obviously, I mentioned again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Our government has acquired just too much power over these years. I think, like I said, establishing a very clear Bill of Rights and dictating exactly what rights a citizen have and giving them back some rights are one of my most important things. But also, we have over $1 billion budget. We really need to do some accountability. We have millions upon millions of dollars that come to this territory, specifically with a rum rebate. I think there's a lack of accountability with that. I don't think the money is going where it needs to be going. I think we need to set, definite laws within there to cover that. Energy. I think we focus on energy as one lump sum within the Virgin Islands, where the St. Thomas, St. John's district have a very different demographic from St. Croix district. We can solve some of our problems immediately tomorrow, and I think we have to install, like I said, establish some rights regarding energy, property taxes. I want to give back some of the power to the people. I think it's atrocious that a government can actually take land away from citizens from the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, did you need me to read the question?
No,
Okay,
that's
you have
fine.
60 seconds.
Okay. I would like to see in this Constitution the ability for the people to vote for the Attorney General. I think we should demand to be able to vote for the President of the United States because we are all American at some level. And I think we should demand to be able for the delegate in Congress to have a vote. I think we need to be very strong about that and very clear. And I also feel with respect to homelessness, right now money is not a problem, but that money has to be directed into decent housing with a 24/7 staff for supervision.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start the other questions that are going to be handled a little more differently. So the first person will answer the question, and then the other people will have a chance to either add to or rebut that. And each of you will have a chance to actually answer a question, and then everybody else will rebut that. We'll start with Attorney James. Is the issue of Native rights off the table for you in this convention? Why or why not? How should it be dealt with? Should it be raised? You have 60 seconds.
tough question to answer in 60 seconds. But nevertheless, the issue is very clear to me. Native rights cannot be placed in a constitution that supplements the supremacy of the United States. Neither can it run affront of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. If we fail to adhere to the memorandum and previous ones as it relates to native rights, this Constitution will also fail. I will not be a part of any position.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Kanegata, would you like to add to that or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
Sure, I'd like to add to it. I don't think it's off the table. It's probably going to be one of the most, ultimately the most controversial topic right here. But as an individual candidate, I will not allow it to cause our Constitution to fail. I don't see it as rights, but I think as Virgin Islanders, I think we need to identify as something. I think every Caribbean island identifies as something. In regards to native rights, let's use American Samoa, right? They are not citizens; they are nationals, right? So they have certain rights as American nationals. I've had individuals on both sides say, John, don't touch it. Others say, John, it has to be on the table. Right now it's undecided, but I think that natives have to be identified as something, and there's nothing wrong with identifying that. Special rights, probably not.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, would you like to add to that or rebut that response? And you have 50 seconds.
Okay, I'll add to that a little bit. I think one of the big problems in the last convention is that when the topic of native rights comes into play, sometimes the American families and the Americans feel left out. It's like the money goes this way. Only these people are important, and just forget about the American population. And the people here, they have a good heart. They really care. They're trying to do their best, and I think there should be an equal playing field for everyone. In terms of actual native rights, I think we need to be stronger for the homeless population. I don't believe anyone should be homeless in the Virgin Islands or anywhere else.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, would you like to add to that response or rebut? You have 50 seconds.
The issue of native rights, as was placed in the 5th Constitution Convention document, was a violation of the U.S. Constitution, plain and simple. And as a result, the document was never acted upon favorably by President Obama and his team, and was never sent to Congress. Actually, it was sent back to the territory to make the necessary adjustments so that the document could be in compliance with the United States Constitution. In addition, from where I sit, the people of the Virgin Islands, once they acquire a constitutional document of their own choosing, then they can make decisions for all the people to live under.
Thank you. All right, so this next question will go to Mr. Kanegata. Do you think the lack of agreement on political status will seriously impact the creation of a constitution? Why or why not? And you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to have an impact on that. If you look at Puerto Rico, they've tried to have a plebiscite. I think it was a couple in 2017. They voted for statehood overwhelmingly. That was one. It went to Congress. It's probably not going to happen, but I don't think status is important. I think establishing our laws, showing that we're responsible and putting a respectful document that's going to last eternity out there, even though it's a living document. I think it's important to have our Constitution prior to have our status.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, would you like to add to that or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
I'll just add to it a little bit. Basically, with respect to status, you have to be really careful because there's a lot of legalities. And so if the people chose to be an independent nation, or the people chose to be a state, or the people want to keep it as an unincorporated territory. There's very serious ramifications to that. And also, the money comes in like after a hurricane, the money comes in after a pandemic from the United States. And you want to be very careful not to cut that off.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, would you like to add to that or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
Only to reflect on my experience as a member of 2 previous status commissions. This debate has been going on in the Virgin Islands community for decades, whether we should first address the issue of status versus that of constitutional development. I came down on the side of constitutional development. I think it's the right way to go as right now, so that the people of the Virgin Islands can create and define a society of their own choosing.
Thank you. Attorney James, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
Yes, I would add to it with some caution. The 5th Constitutional Convention did add an element of status in it. When the memorandum from Congress came back, it did not necessarily state that we cannot have the issue put to the people about status, but it cautioned that the ability of the Constitutional Convention is merely for self-governing, and the status issue is one left to Congress, but they did not say completely no.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Scullion. Given the diverse demographics of the territory, how will you ensure that all voices can be heard in developing our Constitution? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you for that question, Francine. I think the one facet that's really important is with the Constitution. After the document is written, it goes to the governor, and then it goes to the president and the Congress, and then the people here in the Virgin Islands get to vote on it. But with respect to the Organic Act of 1954, the people do not get to vote on that. It is voted on through the Senate. So there will be town meetings for the Constitution, where there wouldn't be town meetings necessarily for the Organic Act.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, would you like to add to that or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
I would like to take a different track. I feel that the 6th Constitutional Convention has a serious challenge ahead of it because of how the local law that was written that created the Constitutional Convention was written placing limitations or guidance as to how the delegate should respond to writing a new document. As I said before, the 4th Constitutional Convention and the 3rd and the 1st and the 2nd caused Congress to make changes to our society over the years under which we now live. And those should also be taken into consideration by the 6th when it develops its document.
Thank you. Attorney James, would you like to add to that response or rebut it? You have 50 seconds.
Yes, thank you. This question, in terms of the complexity of the Virgin Islands citizenship now, is 24 years later. And the complexity of the citizens of the Virgin Islands have changed tremendously. And so, as a delegate, if elected, we got to be very careful in terms of how we write that Constitution to ensure that all of the citizens, regardless of where they're from, issues are part of the Constitution. Because at the end of the day, it is the Constitution, the proposed Constitution, that will go to the voters for their affirmation.
Thank you. Mr. Kanegeda, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to take a different approach. Well, I look at myself culturally. I identify as a Black West Indian, but also I have Hispanic and European, DNA within me. My family is very inclusive, and even beyond that, like I said, I've worked in many different fields within the military, in the private sector. I've been exposed myself right now as a candidate, telling people, hey, I need your help in identifying reasons that's going to affect us from not passing or passing, so I need your help. So I've already started reaching out to a wide demographic of people throughout the Virgin Islands. But first of all, I am a Virgin Islander.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, we will start with Mr. Ross. And this is one where everybody can rebut. Currently, for an initiative to pass in the VI, it must receive 50% plus one of all the eligible voters. This is the highest bar for an initiative to pass in the entire United States. Should this be changed? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
If the Fourth Constitutional Convention had been adopted, it would have given the people of the Virgin Islands the power to change that. The document, the standard that was established basically by Congress was done at our request, because back then there was no such thing as initiative, referendum, and recall. And they set that high standard. If we had a constitution that we could amend, then if we felt that the 50% plus one for an initiative is too high, then we could amend the Constitution to say so. Right now, we can't do it without going back to Congress.
Thank you. Attorney James, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
I would add to it. This is why it is very important that we have a sixth Constitution Convention drafted, proposed, if you will, and voted upon by the people affirmatively. Because as Mr. Ross just said, this will help us to identify that very same question that you have about the 50 plus one. We ourselves, self-governing ourselves, will make that decision, but not without our own self-governing constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Kanegeda, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
Sure, I'll add to that. Yeah, the 50 plus one, it's an unachievable goal under all circumstances. It's the teeth that the government has removed from the citizen. And I've mentioned on more occasions, this is obviously one of my initiatives here. We have to put the power back in the people. If the people are dissatisfied with the government, there's initiatives, and if it's time to recall, we're going to recall individuals. But right now it's just too difficult to recall individuals. So yes, we have to have it removed.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
I agree with the gentleman on this.
All right, so for the next question, we'll start with Mr. James. Let's talk about the size of the legislature. There have been proposals for 9, 11, and 15 members. Do you think the size of our legislature should be apportioned to population size by looking at population numbers every 10 years using census data? As background, we had 15 senators for a population of over 100,000 years ago. We still have 15 for a population of about 85,000, and a seemingly decreasing population as more people move away. Should this be a discussion or not? Explain. You have 90 seconds.
Yes, it should be a discussion among the delegates to the Constitution. And it is one, I believe, could be referred to of districting. However we want to put it, the size of our legislature is just too large and unwieldy. And in that discussion, the delegate, yes, I believe, should look at population if there is the districting issue. But I would say that, yes, that is one of the most paramount issues, I believe, facing us for good governing. We simply cannot, I believe, be able to get good governance based on 15 senators with 3 islands. I really believe that is too unwieldy, and it does not produce the effective governance for the people of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Mr. Kanegeda, you can also answer that question. You have 90 seconds.
So I'm going to add to that as well, or just answer. I don't know if reducing or increasing the Senate is the right thing. I believe that individuals need representation. I think our representatives need to represent all demographics. I think it needs to be looked forward more wholesomely at whether it's districting or numbered seats, or even going as far as possibly having mayors in addition to addressing the executive branch. But it has to be done on a wholesome approach where I also want to have term limits. I think that term limits should also be a part of this package. I believe that even salary, even a part-time senator, right? Because they're a separate branch of government. So once they're there, they can establish what type of salaries they have, and they can change the law. But I think in our Constitution, we think we have to put some concrete laws in place that these things just can't be changed willy-nilly. But I think it has to be a very wholesome approach, not just a matter of just reducing the Senate or increasing the Senate.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, you also have the opportunity to answer that question. You have 90 seconds.
I really agree with John 100% on this issue, and I feel that it is worth a really good discussion within the 6th Constitutional Convention, because they're important decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, you also get to answer that question, and you have 90 seconds.
While I agree that the discussion as to the size of the legislature should occur basically based on the population of the territory and the one man, one vote rule that to adhere to the U.S. Constitution as we speak. I believe that once we adopt our own Constitution and put provisions for review of the issues such as the size of the legislature on a periodic basis every 10 years or every 15 years, we put in place the mechanism in which we can make those adjustments. As a delegate to the Constitutional Convention, if I'm successful, I would caution the members not to turn the Constitutional Convention process into a legislative process. Those are 2 distinct activities that should occur.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Kanegeda. Let's look at St. John. Even though there is an at-large senator from St. John, some citizens still feel underrepresented in the legislature. What ideas could you bring to a discussion on this matter in the convention? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think number one, get rid of the large senator. Let them have their own representative. I would like to see, like I said, not trying to legislate, but I would like to see more individual representation. I would like to see, my old mentor, Monty Golden, always talked about, like you said, having almost separate governments. I think all of these things need to be put on the table during this time, so we don't have to have any regrets moving forward with that. What we have right now doesn't appear to be working for us, right? Our agencies have a tough time paying their bills. We're not meeting the needs of the citizens. We really have to take a wholesome approach of our whole government to see what is going to work and put some troubleshooting policies and in place to really correct this.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, you can answer that question also. You have 60 seconds.
I think the people of St. John sometimes feel cheated or left out. Why that is, I do not know, but from what I have heard from people on St. John, they don't feel that they're getting their fair share. So, there's been talk about a marina. There's been talk about fixing the sidewalks. There's been talk about benches for comfort for when tourists come to visit the island, or just someone wants to sit down and relax. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of attention or money going into St. John. So I think it really would be worthwhile and it would be fair to see what the needs are.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, you can answer that also. You have 60 seconds.
Again, based on the population of our territory, this has always been a challenge as to how to maintain a district senator for St. John under the U.S. Constitution provision of one man, one vote. The current formula where the senator is at large was an attempt to address that. On paper, it basically gives the impression that the St. Thomas St. John district ends up with 8 senators and St. Croix ends up with 7. In reality, however, history has shown us that when the at-large senator from St. John votes against the interests of St. Croix, they get defeated. So we basically need to look at the reality of the politics of our territory. Yes.
Thank you. Attorney James, you also have the opportunity to answer that question. You have 60 seconds.
Okay. Under current law, representation for St. John is based on one man, one vote, as the Constitution states. It is a difficult task as it relates to how do you really determine a senator just for the District of St. John when you look at the manner in which the one man, one vote was created. The size of St. John and its population is one of the drawbacks to the one man, one vote and their representation. So it'll be a task, but the Constitutional Convention, the 6th Constitutional Convention, will have to deal with it.
Thank you. So the next question will start with Ms. Scullion. This will be one where you answer and the others have a chance to add to or rebut. Currently, all our resolutions are non-binding, in contrast to majority of states. Should this be changed by our Constitution? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
I'll be honest with you, I would have to study that before really commenting on it. I would really have to give that a little bit of thought.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, would you like to add to that or rebut that response?
My response is if a constitution is adopted by the people of the Virgin Islands that establishes the concept of initiative, referendum, and recall, then a referendum can be acted upon by the people without even involving the legislature, as it occurs in other states and jurisdiction under the U.S. flag. We need to adopt our Constitution to acquire that power for ourselves.
Thank you. Attorney James, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
Yeah, the question is one of power to the people. Because non-binding is basically a political statement. And that political statement goes directly to the local legislature. But if we have a constitutional convention for our own, then we can decide that initiative doesn't have to be non-binding. They can be binding upon the citizen of the Virgin Islands, and that will give back some sense of self-governing by those initiatives back to the people.
Thank you. Mr. Kanigeda, would you like to add to or rebut that response? And you have 50 seconds.
There's not much more to add to that, but like when we talk about resolutions, the resolutions to recognize this person, it's really local government. I don't think it's one of the bread and butter issues that really concern in Virgin Islanders. But having said that, obviously, if we were successful in passing this Constitution, it gives us our ability to either make this, like I said, part of a more binding body or policy. So, but ultimately, to me, it's not one of the bread and butter issues that I'm concerned about.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next one will also be an answer and rebuttal or addition to the others, and we'll start with Mr. Ross. There is funding in the bill for expert advice. What kinds of advice or what kinds of experts do you think would be needed for the convention to be successful? You have 60 seconds.
Wow. Looking at the quality of the delegates and the lengthy experience that I note from people who have been involved in Virgin Islands politics for the past 50 years, you know, I think we have enough intelligence within the territory and enough expertise and experience to get the job done. We just need to sit down and get it done.
Thank you. Attorney James, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
There is not much for me to add other than to say the delegates, as I look at that list, I believe have enough wisdom and understanding to present a document that will be passed. And we already have the 5th Constitutional Convention with the United States stating the issues that they see that needs to be rectified. And I don't think that spending more money on experts will change that.
Thank you. Mr. Kanegeda, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
Sure, I agree with the gentleman that there is a lot of expertise in different fields there, but I still think we need some expertise probably in constitutional law, just to guide us along the way, so we're not making mistakes like Mr. Ross said earlier in regards to trying to legislate this Constitution. But I believe, like I said, as a candidate, I plan to really push the limits to really protect the District of St. Croix. So I think a constitutionalist would be important to have their expertise in there to keep us on track.
Thank you. And Ms. Scullion, again, would you like to add to or rebut that response? You have 50 seconds.
I would really agree with all three gentlemen on this, and I do feel, though, that we may need to call in 1 or 2 attorneys who specialize in constitutional law, or to just look at things objectively and see if there's any real problems.
For our final question, I invite you to address any other topic of concern that you have an interest in, along with your strategy for addressing the topic. And we will start with Attorney James. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you for the question. One of the key issues I believe that needs to be addressed, that is of concern to me, is the Virgin Islands unincorporated status. We have to find a way, strategically, to get the United States Congress to remove the unincorporated status of the Virgin Islands. And so I believe that the 6th Constitutional Convention should address it. We have come a long way because recently I see where that the insular cases that basically went to the heart of the unincorporated status of the Virgin Islands has been addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Kanegeda, again, you have 60 seconds.
Sure. It's ironic that we just mentioned insular cases. I think we brought up Obama at least 2 occasions here. You know, it's ironic that our first black president, didn't address the needs of the Virgin Islanders, where I think we're even addressed as savages within some of his interior documents. It's time for a change. And I think it's going to start with this convention. I hopefully we're all successful in working together as a team to really address the Bill of Rights, but also take this document, this live document, to our Congress, to our Department of Interior, to start recognizing us as the citizens that we are. Not the second-class citizens that we currently are, but the potential to be a full citizen of the United States of America.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, you have 60 seconds.
I like the idea of an elected attorney general because I think it really is an adult responsibility to really think for yourself and to really understand the depth of problems and to come up with solutions that are as peaceful and just as possible. And so that is one issue I will be bringing up as your delegate.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, you have 60 seconds.
My goal is to, at the end of this process, have the people of the Virgin Islands adopt a constitution. And I am hesitant to create debate that would cause our people to be divided, because that's been the end result of the last 3 constitutional conventions, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th. We need to identify those laws and procedures that are in place, that we are currently being governed by, put them in a document, put the ability to amend the document, and therefore adopt the document. That way we will take the debate of elected officials, attorney generals, away from Congress.
Thank you. Now each candidate will have 90 seconds each for a closing statement, starting with Attorney James.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing us to come before you to address what we believe is the most important issue facing the Virgin Islands as it relates to drafting a constitution. My role as your delegate would be to listen during this period of time and up until November 5th. Once November 5th comes and I am successful, I will then be part of a group of delegates that will be honored to represent you, the voters, and present in a setting the issue that confronts the Virgin Islands today, with the mindset that the 5th Constitutional Convention in many ways is a template. And I believe that once we review that template, review what the Congress have said, review what the governor has said, we will be successful.
Thank you. Mr. Kanegeda, again, you have 90 seconds for your closing statement.
Sure, Francine, I'd like to thank you also for being a moderator today, the League of Women Voters, and also the people of Virgin Islands for giving us the opportunity to come before you to ask, number 1, for your vote, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm asking you to vote for number 15 on November 5th. But it's an honor, first of all, to even be considered as a candidate, right? We passed through that first process with the Board of Elections, but to come before the people, we might not have the right answers. I don't think it's going to be a perfect document, but I want the people to understand that we are here as almost like sacrificial lambs to produce something that the people, that we really need to really move forward in the future for the Virgin Islands. We want people to be patient with us, but I think as candidates, we have to be good listeners also, not to put out a document that's going to fail. If something it's very minute and it's going to cause this thing to fail, I think we need to just take it off the table. But I think we have to work respectively as individuals. I think this would be very different from other elections where it's very, very divisive at times when you run in for governor or run in for Senate. I think this is almost a team effort where you want everybody to be successful because we're all coming together to make one living document at the end of the day for the people of the Virgin Islands. So thanks again.
Thank you. Ms. Scullion, again, 90 seconds for your closing remarks.
Okay. I am Sheila Scullion, number 5 on the ballot, and I do want to thank Ms. Lang and the League of Women's Voters for this very well-organized event today. I also wanted to share with the listening audience so that everybody is aware, if you want to register to vote, you can do so through October 6th, I believe is correct. And it is really important. We are at a crossroads now. It is now or never for the Virgin Islands. So I feel that you will see this November, you'll see the senators running. I think there's 14 on St. Croy that will be running. You will see Constitutional Convention delegates, that's us and a bunch of other people, and the Board of Elections, and I think the Board of Education. So it is important, and we as adults, we've got to learn to really work together and to get it done.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, again, 90 seconds for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Francine. I'd like to commend my fellow panelists for participating in this discussion, and also like to thank the League of Women Voters for making this possible, along with our local public television station for, again, providing the technical support necessary for this activity to occur. My focus going forward is to convince the people of the Virgin Islands that over the past 5 decades, we have written a constitution, even though we have not written one that we ourselves can amend. We wrote documents that caused the Congress to allow us to elect a governor, to have non-voting delegates to Congress, to have Supreme Courts, to have the ability to float bonds for private activity, and so forth and so on, to grant the people power, even though it is strong in referendum, initiative, and recall. We need to put these documents together and create a constitution that all of us are comfortable with because we're living under it, and give ourselves the power to amend it.
Thank you, candidates and viewers, and thank you, WTJX TV and staff, for today's program. The League of Women Voters hopes this program has helped you, the voter, in understanding the candidates and in so doing inform your vote in November. The League reminds you that your vote determines the future of the Virgin Islands. Every vote does count. During elections, we often see an individual who barely makes the cut because a few more people did vote, or one who barely loses and wishes if only a few more persons had voted. So let your voice be heard by your vote. It's your right. Take it. Thank you for watching. I am Francine Lang for the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, saying vote early or vote in November. Just vote.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Closed captioning of this program was underwritten by the Office of Self-Determination and Constitutional Development of UVI.